session. Our session is on customer engagement. So we will be picking up on some of the themes from today, but also really focusing in on customer engagement. I'm the CEO of Futerra. My name is Lucy Shea. And again, I'm absolutely honored to be here with such a fantastic panel. So at Futerra, we are a change agency. And what that means is we help our clients, big brands and major foundations, create change, to disrupt their business models, to create change in their brands, to change behaviors. We're really fortunate. We get to work, well, we don't just work in fashion, we work across industries, but as far as fashion goes, we're very fortunate to work with some brilliant brands, from Kering to CNA Foundation, CNA to H&M. And what we found over these 16 years of working on change and looking at consumers and looking at behaviors is there's something that works, magic and logic. So you need the logic of sustainability. Every effort you do has got to be grounded in the logic and material issues of sustainability. Otherwise, you're going to be barking up the wrong tree, as we would say in the UK, or get greenwashed. But it's got to be combined with the magic of creativity. Otherwise, you will be forgotten or ignored or not even noticed by your consumer or investor or any other audience you care to think of. So we'll be looking at that and other issues. I thought I might start with some ground rules, just to lay the scene before I hand over to my brilliant panelists. Number one, it's not the consumer's fault. You know, when we look at sustainability and circular and say, why doesn't it get taken up? It is not, let's not blame the consumer. We need to sell to the consumer. We need to apply everything we know about brilliant business and marketing and actually sell sustainable lifestyles or bringing back clothes to the consumer. Number two, so with that in mind, let's not blame the consumer. Let's also remain optimistic. You know, mindset and believing we can actually make this incredible shift to a sustainable paradigm or circular paradigm. Mindset's key in that. It's called, well, if you can imagine a better world, it's like working, it's called self-fulfilling prophecy. It's the kind of bedrock of modern sociology. George Soros calls it reflexivity, and actually assigns his huge business success to picturing really strongly what he's aiming for and then going for that. So as we tackle this greatest entrepreneurial opportunity of our time and move to sustainable lifestyles and circular, let's keep that mindset and the need to imagine a better world in mind. And let's challenge ourselves here to really see what we can find out about raising the floor, about incrementally improving how we engage with our customers, but also opening the roof, disrupting how we engage with our customers and disrupting our business models. You'll see that we will be moving between sustainability and circularity. You know, the focus of this conference is circular, but we're going to find ourselves talking about more widely sustainable lifestyles. And I have this fantastic panel here who I'm so delighted to work with. So I'll introduce each of them much more fulsomely as we come to each question. But we've got Daniella, just so you know who everyone is, as if you need to, they need no introduction. But we've got Daniella Vega from Selfridges, we've got Kirsten Brodde from Greenpeace, we've got Vanessa Belleau from WGSN, we've got Shaway Yeh from Modern Weekly, and we've got Elin Larsson from Filippa K. Okay. Oh, before we start, we've got a rough flow. We kind of know what we want to talk about. You know, entrepreneurial opportunity, be able for you to walk out with some real guidance on bringing back clothes and recycling, how you get your customers to do it, how you shift them to sustainable lifestyles. Some provocative questions as well. But before we do that, does anyone have a burning question right now? We won't answer it right this minute, but I'll see if I can weave it into the conversation, and we're also going to save some time for questions at the end, so we could, if it hasn't been answered, we will answer it then. So any show of hands, is there anything that someone really wants answered by the panelists? Yes, lady down here. Do we have any roving mics? I should have asked that. You can shout. Yes. Okay, great. That's a question after my own heart. Thank you very much for that. Okay, anything else?
Over there.
Yes, sorry, I've missed one. I've missed here, and then we'll go to the panel. So, lady here. Okay. And then the lady in the middle. Sorry, it's this lady here. A magazine. Okay. I think we know who'll be answering that question. Great. Okay. Thank you for that. We will be able to weave those in, I think. Okay. So, firstly, Elin, hi.
Hi.
So, Elin, you've been at Filippa K for over 10 years. You're now the Sustainability Director. Congratulations. But what I love is that you've done a real range of roles. You've worked as Supply Chain Director, you've worked on logistics, and I think what you're doing at Filippa K in your role is to really integrate sustainability into the core business and the core brand. Now, Filippa K's famous for pioneering a circular approach to fashion. And I know you'd be far more modest and say, we're at the start of the journey. But you have, along the way so far, you've tested lots of different approaches to customer engagement. And I wondered if you could share with us, as we've already had questions on, what's really working, what's really cool and working, and what's not worked.
Yeah. We've learned so much. So the first thing that I wanted to say is actually, as an organization or a company doing this, you need to be brave. You need to be brave to dare to do new things, because there's no maps out there yet. So that's actually one of the first learnings that we did. And also that we need to be humble enough to adjust along the way, because it is a learning process. So, but I'll share some of the insights. And I guess one of them being, how do we talk about sustainability? Do we even need to talk about sustainability? And do the customer need to know that they are part of a circular model? And we don't think so. That's not what's going to be the tipping point for getting customers on board. So for us, it's been, for instance, our philosophy has been from the very beginning to make clothes that can last for a long time, both in terms of quality but also style. And we've had a second-hand store in Stockholm since 2008. It's been profitable since day one. And that's been a way for us to showcase that our clothes really stand the test of time. But we have not communicated it as a sustainability aspect. Customers coming there goes there to find unique pieces, to a little bit of treasure hunting. But also for customers who can't afford to pay the price for the new clothing, they have a chance to buy it pre-owned. So I think in that sense, we doesn't always have to talk. It's not the sustainability aspect alone that will trigger a change of behavior.
Yeah.
And it's actually the same thing with the lease concept that we started 2 years ago now. And when we launched it, we talked about, to the consumer that they should try the rental because it's a way of updating your wardrobe without contributing to overconsumption. We got a lot of positive attention, and but it didn't really do the trick. We didn't get that many rentals. So we realized, well, it's not. We need to actually talk to the customers in terms of what's in it for them and using that perspective. So we started talking about, well, you should try rental instead of buying things so that you can update your wardrobe without getting it totally overcrowded with clothing. Or actually, being able to update it without paying a lot of money for those kind of clothes you only wear for a few occasions. And then, we started to see a change. Still, it's really small numbers, but at least, yeah.
Have you found we've heard earlier about, from Eileen Fisher about how she's found it's forged a deeper relationship with her customers, given her more access to her customers, found out more about her customers. Have you found similar?
Definitely. But it's interesting because I was thinking about, we also have a take-back system that was launched 2 years ago as well.
Yeah.
And it's a fantastic way of actually having a deeper relationship with both the customer, but also the clothing itself. So you get the stuff back and you see what doesn't live up to our quality standards, for instance. But I was talking to one of my colleagues here in Denmark, and she said, well, you know, we can have customers coming into the stores and asking if they can get a discount. And we don't do that. We don't work that way. But she said, well, if you have a Filippa K garment that you don't use anymore, you can bring it back and you'll get a reward for that. And she was like, well, I don't want to give I don't want to give out my Filippa K pieces. So I guess that's also a way of really showing that the clothes becomes wardrobe favorites. But we have gotten a lot of pieces back, and what happens with it is that the things we can sell again, we store, and the rest goes to charity today. Hopefully we have different flows in the future. Yeah. But the majority of the things we get back, we can actually sell again.
One final question before I move on, and linked to this question around really cool examples. How do you get the customers to bring the clothes back? You know, other brands really struggle, I feel, in actually cutting through all the different behavioral barriers to actually get people to rummage around in their wardrobes, remember to bring the clothes with them. You know, there's so many different behavioral steps. What have you done to actually get customers to bring clothes back?
It's been crucial to find the way of rewarding the customer and making it as convenient as possible. So right now they're getting a good price for what they're actually returning, no matter what state it's in. And that has also been one important way, because when the customer has gone through the effort, you know, cleaning out the closet, putting it in bags, bringing it to the stores, we really needed to make sure that we take everything back, so that they don't have to, you know, no, we can't accept that, go home with it again. So making it as convenient as possible. Yeah. But with that said, I mean, today you have to go to a physical store to return the clothes. We actually did a campaign this fall where we used the online store to get the customers to return clothes they don't use through what's called a repack bag. So we ship things out with a repack bag. They take the clothes out, they can put in the old garments and send it back to us. But no, it didn't work. So I think, I don't know whether it's not, customers are not used to doing it, and that's why it didn't really work, or the reason for it. Yeah.
So one reason might be, and here I'm going to bring on Vanessa, is at Futerra we talk a lot, and Vanessa and I have spoken on the phone about the need to appeal to, well, if you're selling sustainability, to sell as you would sell any other product or brand, you appeal to functional and social and emotional benefits. You know, one of the reasons the Tesla is so, from outside the industry, the Tesla is so successful and the #1 valued car company now is it sells on the experience and on the insane mode. Have you seen those videos of people going, ah, when they go, you know, 0 to 60 in 3 seconds? You know, it's not sold on functional. And I wonder if there's something more in the online, and as I linked to Vanessa, to bring out in social and emotional. And so Vanessa is director at WGSN, highly trained in market research, which I love, now a brand strategist and futurist. So it's going to really bring some consumer insight into the room. And so Vanessa, my first question is, how do we up this emotional appeal to consumers? What should we do?
We need to go back to, I don't know if this works, we need to go back to basics. And I think that, I just had a session actually, if you came, it was good. But basically what we're looking at was going back on this experience. And you know, when we talk about functional, social, and emotional, that's great. But it's from industry to consumers. And I think that one of the things that we unfortunately do when we talk about sustainability is that first, we don't make things simple. Second, we kind of get a little bit boring because we preach. And nobody wants to be preached at, right? It's about, and I think that we forget that we are talking to people. We are talking to anybody. Of course, here I could come, and of course, you know, I'm coming here and I'm talking, but I'm talking to the converted. And actually, in our session just before, we were just talking about how do we make that segue to the average consumer. And one of the things is really being, what we see in our research at WGSN is that consumers really want radical honesty. They want truth, and they want transparency. Now, can we be really transparent 100%? No, let's be honest. But again, we need to tell them that there is, and we say this, we do trend forecasting. So most people say, how do you do that? How do you know what's coming the next 2 to 5 years? And sometimes, just to take the mix, sometimes I'm like, we have a crystal ball. But it's part of the magic. And I think that it's the math and the magic. And as you said, my background is 100% data. So for me, colors are just colors. I mean, at the time when I started. Now, of course, they're more, it's actually that emotion, that passion. And I think that what we need to do is, and I have always frameworks because I'm a consultant, so deconstructing exactly what needs to happen in order to make sustainability conscious. Because, and when I say conscious, is widely conscious. The number one thing is not to talk about sustainability, and because consumers don't get that. Even I don't get it, to be honest, because I find it boring. I do. My attention span is of 8 seconds. I'm a millennial. And going forward, it will be of under 5 seconds. So what do you guys do, and what do I do as a consultant to get my clients to care about sustainability? And I think care equals feelings. If you talk to somebody to their hearts, Cupidon, right? You talk to their hearts and you create an emotion, whether it is a beautiful emotion like happiness and love, or whether it's disappointment and sadness. That's an emotion. Another thing that we need to think about when we target consumers is that, as one of the key consumer trends that we talk about, is diversity. Diversity is now. In the next, I call it fair representation. Mm-hmm. Sustainability, consciousness, social consciousness, any way we want to put it, needs to be democratic. I am preaching right now. Mm-hmm. I am a black woman and a curvy one. Mm-hmm. There are very few labels out there, if I care about sustainability, that cater to me. Mm. That's a problem. Mm. I would like to stand up and do it. Right? That's a problem. So what do we do to make sustainability or consciousness democratic? We make it simple. Not simplistic, but simple. We deconstruct it. We look at our priorities. I love the young guys this morning, and they were like, number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, and I was like, my God, they're going on to number 50. We have so much to do. And it was fabulous because it was a fabulous moment. But again, they're talking to converted. If we talk to people who don't necessarily care, how do we make it simple? 1, 2, 3. What do we need to do? What do you need to do every single day? Recycling. Somebody said this morning, and I forgot, and I apologize, but somebody said, there was a lot of education about recycling, but we failed because we didn't maintain it. We thought it was this beautiful marketing ploy, this beautiful thing that needed to be done, but we let it go. And the reality is that if we're not serious about it, consumers are not going to care. Because fashion, and somebody is going to talk about this, but fashion is something that is real and that talks to us. Yeah. If I buy a beautiful pair of whatever, it's to make me feel good or sad when I don't find my size. Right? And I think that this is something that we need to think about. Democratic, simple, and developing new practices. And being brave, as you said.
This is great. This makes me think back to this question around how do we give consumers agency to change the industry, not try and change consumers, but let them be who they are, respect who they are. And also, you made me think of one of my pet peeves, which isn't what you were saying, but you referred to someone saying educating the consumer, which is one of my pet peeves. We're not going to educate the consumer out of this. We're going to inspire and enthuse and build stuff they want to buy or do or experience. And I wondered if you could just elaborate on that a little bit or give any examples or your view on this.
So my views on, because as a consultant, I could come here and actually talk about a lot of examples, but the reality is that, we've had so many examples here today, and I feel that those are great examples, but it's about scalability, right? So I could, of course, talk about Filippa K, I could talk about Alan Fisher, but we all know those examples, right? I think that education, I say, and I agree with you, I don't like this word necessarily, but sometimes, you've got to play to the rules of the market, the industry. And, at the moment, educating or education is a buzzword. But the reality is that you're right, it is about inspiration. It is about disruption. It's about understanding how we can talk to a consumer on their levels. And one thing that you said as well, which I really loved, is that you talked about being humble. And I think that there is a lot, and I'm lucky to be working with a lot of big companies. And one of the first things that I say, and quote me on this, I've done it many times, is how dare you? That's the first question that I ask, and they're like, oh my God, who is this crazy woman? And I'm like, how dare you be arrogant? How dare you? The best companies in this world will always take 20% of what they believe and challenge it. And I think that a lot of the time, some companies believe they're the best. My job is to tell them they're not, and to make them push, to that 40 to that 50% of disruption. Yeah. If we want sustainability, or if we want to make advancement when it comes to our ecosystem, we need to be serious about it. And I think that a lot of brands take the 2%, and they're happy with that. We made it better by 2%. I'm not a 2% girl. I like volume, right? And for me, it's about let's go with the plush. You go big or you go home. Yeah. Nature doesn't need us. We need nature. If we really focus on that, we'll get somewhere. Yeah. Preaching over.
There's a brilliant message inside the brochure. We do work with the CNA Foundation. This is not one of ours. I'm not doing such a plug. But saying, nature's like your mother. Don't mess with her. I just thought that is brilliant. Okay, we're going to keep with this disruption theme. And Kirsten, I'm going to bring you in to talk about disrupting shopping. And what are consumers telling us? Now, you've pioneered the eco-fashion movement in Germany as an author and a journalist, and pretty much globally as the leader of Greenpeace's detox campaign. And you haven't just kept with the detox campaign, which I'm sure many of you have engaged with, certainly lots of our clients, but you at Greenpeace have recently conducted a huge study into several markets, original research into consumer habits, views, preferences on shopping. And there's some really interesting insights in there and some very provocative findings for brands. So the floor is yours. What can you tell us from the research?
Thank you. So this survey it's hot off the press, so it has been published on Monday, and you can find it on the internet. And not surprisingly, we were asking consumers about their fashion consumption habits. We were asking them in East Asia, of course, in Hong Kong and in China, mainland China, in Taiwan, but also in Europe, in Italy, and in Germany. And what we found out, of course, most of them, they admit that they buy more than they actually need. Yeah, but one could say this is not a great surprise. So what we can see is that overconsumption of fashion is spreading like a virus over the globe. So mindless overconsumption of fashion has become the cultural norm. But then the good news now is that there's also increasing self-reflection of consumers. So they are developing what I would call a shopping fatigue. So this shopping does not make them happy. So actually, it's just a short burst of excitement. And half of the people that we surveyed, they said it's simply vanishing. It's not lasting longer than a day. So this is what we call after the binge. There is the hangover. Yeah. So, and what does it mean for brands? I would say brands should take this as an alarm, as a wake-up call, because what you can clearly see is that consumers are really fed up with high volumes and fast-changing trends. So what the big brands are now offering is not really catering the consumers' needs. So they are hungry for change. They're looking for something else. And there, of course, I have to say, I was deeply disappointed about this Pulse report. Yeah, I know it has been celebrated so much, so I have to say, circularity, for instance, I know it's the biggest buzzword of the industry, but believe me or not, it's far, far away. So at the moment, it's really an illusion. So what we would need, while waiting for techno fixes, I would say we need to slow down. That's a very simple recipe. Secondly, of course, the report is completely focusing on big brands. I know they are celebrating Kering, they are celebrating H&M. I would say what's really missing is the small brands. They are really walking the talk, yeah? They are the innovators. They are the adventurers. And they're not mentioned in this bloody report. Yeah, and maybe the third thing that I should mention as an environmentalist, please, read the report and see that they are really recommending that we should have even more synthetics, maybe some of you are not aware of this, but the high rise of synthetics is really polluting our oceans. Every single time you wash your synthetics, there is a massive fiber loss, and this is all ending up in the sea, and I have to say, also recycling polyester is ending up in our seas. So recommending more synthetics, I think that is, I would say, the way to hell, and it's also recommended in this Pools report. So I think we should definitely take a different road, and yes.
Take what, sorry?
A different road.
A different road, yeah.
And end fast fashion, for sure, because clothes, I think they deserve to be valued and to be cherished, and they are not anymore. And that's the responsibility. And it's the responsibility of the big brands. They educated us, to just look at price. And now they are blaming consumers that they are unwilling to pay more. What do you expect? If you train your consumers to just looking on cheap prices, they are doing this. So again, I would say we need a radical change in the fashion industry, and then it will survive. And otherwise, I would say, we don't need it.
Yeah, it's something I think about a lot. How we substitute for shopping, how we substitute behaviours rather than getting consumers to sacrifice. And I couldn't agree more with a lot of your points. So I have a question for you, and maybe it's a slightly unfair question because your role is to provoke and to say, guys, we need to change, and then it's all of our jobs to actually find the answer. So you may not have an answer to this, but I'm curious about how we can find a business model for this, for raising the value of slowing down, raising the value of consuming less, raising the value of experiences. So we've been running the swishing movement for many years at Futerra, which is it's just clothes swapping parties. We just gave it a fancy name and built a website, and hundreds of thousands of women have come to swishing parties. And it's about replacing the thrill of retail therapy with something that gives you the same feeling but doesn't have the impact on the planet or people. And I wondered to you or any of the panel, ideas on the business model. How can, Elin, you've spoken about this already a bit, but how can we find a way for brands to find value in slowing down?
So I think, again, I'm speaking about small brands. There are a lot of successful businesses out there, so you can see that it's possible. For instance, you can offer denim, for instance, with a lifelong guarantee for free repair and be successful with this on the market. You come up with this unbeatable and inspirational idea to offer a 30-year warranty for sweatshirts done in the UK by a small label. So I think they are already developing the business case, earning money, not with selling new stuff, but for instance, offering services, offering repair services, offering lending. So I think there are a lot of ways to earn money, and not only earning money by selling a lot of fast fashion anymore. So I think it's still growing, and again, I think it's scalable, and I think it will be profitable. So we should really see the small examples already out there.
Yeah. And just finally, before we move on, from the research, anything that surprised you? Anything that you thought, I was not expecting to see that?
Today, in the report?
No, your research, your survey into consumer habits, anything that was counterintuitive to you or you didn't expect to see?
Yeah, I think I was really admiring the self-reflections of the consumers. So they really start to rethink their consumption habits, and that is a good thing. So I would. They are really open with self-critique, and of course, they are also open to say, okay, shopping does not make us happy. So drop your phone, go out, start living a life, admire the natural environment, but shopping is not the right medicine.
Yeah. Well, we have a terrible issue with nature deficit disorder across all generations at the moment. Subject for another panel. Okay, so now we're going to stick with this theme developing around sustainable lifestyles, and Shaway, we're going to come to you. Now, name any influential lifestyle and fashion magazine you care to think of, and Shaway Yeh has opened it and led it. She's opened magazines in New York, GQ in Taiwan, Vogue China, and now she's the editorial director of Modern Weekly, which is one of the most influential magazines, to your point, on mainstream fashion and culture. But under her influence as editorial director, you've been steering the ship towards sustainability somewhat. Yeah. And
Not
I
yet,
wondered
just
if
started.
What's that, sorry?
I said, not yet, I just started.
Just started, at the start of the journey. But I wondered if you could tell us about the role of media and what you see as the responsibility or role of media in promoting sustainable lifestyles.
Well, I think the role of media in promoting is ubiquity importance everywhere around the world, not just in China. But just back to the point, I'm trying to steering the direction of the publications towards sustainability. It's actually come from last year when I've come to Copenhagen Fashion Summit. I realized there's really a huge gap between, because there are journalists who really cares about these issues, but they are all from news publication. But you rarely see like consumer magazines, especially fashion consumer magazine, which is really directing what to buy, what the trends are, informs people's aesthetics, and cares and talk about it. Well, reason could be many. Like, I cannot agree more with Vanessa. Like, well, most of these issues are really miserable, boring, or if you really need to understand, like, for example, like circular economy, and it's actually a very difficult concept. Yeah, so not so many like consumer magazine and readers or even editors have this kind of capacities. So if you don't have, even if the editors itself doesn't even have the capacity to understand it, how can you make it interesting and understandable to the readers? So I say, well, actually, maybe instead of us start talking about the readers or audience immediately, why don't we talk about the fashion media ourselves? So I started, because in China, you have all kinds of different medias. Like, of course, you have official news medias. They will talk about, because like environmental issues or circular economy is even a part of the national policies. And all those things, or like ecological civilization is also one of like the pillars of the country. So all the news medias will talk about this, but this has nothing to do with like fashion consumer magazines or the general consumers' lives. So, and then those two are not linked together. And then so I say, why don't I start changing within my own publications? So the most easy thing is I start the weekly columns, like all the other respectable newspapers will do about green fashion. But it would just really like to taste, first of all, can my editors find enough topics to talk about it? Can they educate themselves within themselves, and then finding the way to do research and talk about it and still feel being interested? Because the thing is, like maybe afterwards, why do I need to write something so dry? But then after a year later, I'm here. So I think the weekly column is still going on. And people are like really interested in it, and we did a special issues, which is all about sustainability. But it's not just about green fashion. So there's also about, because actually there's many different aspects about sustainability, right? Like something like fashion should be care and love, or all those kind of traditional value about savoir-faire and beautiful object like a 90, like an old MS bag owned by your grandmothers and then now passed on to you. I mean, all this is part of a broader like idea about sustainability. So we explore all different kind of angles of that. And then during, and then so I think, and then, and and when we were doing that, any other major like consumer fashion magazine are interested, which I'm really kind of surprised. And then so during the last month's Shanghai Fashion Week, so it decided, I think now the media's world has so many because everyone can be a media, right? Except like you should keep still on the forefront of what's going on and bring all these things to your readers. I think you should also be trying to engage with your readers or your industrial circles. So what I choose to do first is to engage with Chinese designers. So during the Shanghai Fashion Weeks, we did a forums. It's called Eyes Wide Open. Actually, just jokingly said it's a very serious forums. We're talking about, because I think the Chinese fashion designer, they are just kind of coming of age, and then they are new, they are young, they are struggling with like finding their own aesthetics, and then also like commercial systems or how to sell, how to make a name, etc. I said, but also in the meantime, they should start consider about social responsibility and what the industry is really about. So we did a forum about that, and then I think the outcome was really good. Like actually, because all these designers, they're very young, they're millennials, so they're most of them are educated in the West, so they're more or less they're aware of these issues already. So even some of them already using in the inspirations or whatever, they just never really find a chance to connect with each others. And then so I think this is kind of thing is what media can do to trying to, I mean, start with media itself, because most of like a consumer publication doesn't even address this issue and trying to understand what is sustainability yet.
Yeah. And you mentioned that you've had feedback. What kind of feedback have you had? What has your readership said to you, or what's got them to respond most?
Well, I think it really depends because, I mean, there are like miserable side of the sustainability, like an example like Rana Plazas. I think people really feel like, well, we didn't know that before. So actually, I think that make them, well, they will say they would think more. Like, because I have to say like fashion or shopping or whatever, it's like in different countries or different regions, it means kind of different things. Before I always say like shopping in China is kind of like cultural activities, right? So because people just come into this kind of relatively more affluent lifestyles in the very recent time. So unlike like Americas or Western or more developed countries, like people are used to have seeing the abundance of beautiful things. So for a lot of people, for most of the people, majority of the people in China, actually, which they're minority people in China, only people who live in the big city can afford to do that. They start seeing all this influx of all those like beautiful things. So, I mean, they have a right to enjoy, to shop, to choose something different, to choose something which their parents' generation doesn't have. So why stop them? But it just because, but you just have to kind of educate them to think more before they shop. And then, so to keep that pleasure and enjoyment. So that's part of, and then of course there, oh, sorry, I forgot the question. Oh, that's for the feedback. Miserable part.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
But for the much better part, which is because I think now a lot of the consumers or readers or the people in the fashion industries in China, they are all like younger and millennial peoples. And then there's a lot of changes happen. Like because, for example, like 10 years ago, there's no secondhand stores in China. But now 10 years later, like my editors, they're renting their clothes to wear like a whole year long without buying any new clothes. So, I mean, not only because it's available, but the change of that, the change of the concepts is kind of very dramatically shifts.
The status of secondhand is up. That's very encouraging. Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to move to our last panelist, Daniella, so we can save some time for questions. Daniella, hello. Daniella Vega is the Sustainability Director of Selfridges. And we first met when you worked at Sky. the media group. And I wondered if you could tell us a bit about, why you moved into fashion and what you've learned from being at Selfridges about shifting sustainable product.
Yeah. Well, I worked at Sky for a while, and I guess the two things I was focused on at Sky were choice editing, to sum it up, and so I spent a lot of time looking at the news stories that we covered and what we didn't cover, and how that impacted on society in terms of impacting behaviour change, and so whether we mirrored society or whether we moved society or whether it was a bit of both. So it was a lot of work on the choice editing side. And the other side of it is the behaviour change and the cultural piece. So at Sky, I spent a lot of time focusing on how can we use this huge media platform to bring attention to the issues that our employees care about, our customers care about, and ultimately our shareholders care about too. And so using that platform to bring in environmental issues, not in a preachy way, but in a way that people like to consume messaging via television, in the hope that we could influence positive behaviour change. And I think it's the same in retail and in fashion. Those two things around choice editing, so the responsibility of the business to move towards a circular economy, is absolutely the direction we need to go in. Sadly, it's the exception rather than the rule, which is a shame. But I think, listening to all the speakers this morning, I think we mustn't fall into this notion of circular economy as an industrialized concept of sustainability, because I think if that happens and we're focused on the technical aspects of getting our businesses in order, we lose this culture, the importance of changing cultures. And that, I think, at Selfridges is a massive opportunity, because we set trends, and the way we work at Selfridges is very much sustainability is intertwined with creativity, which is intertwined with what we buy and how we buy.
I wanted to ask you a bit more about that, actually, because you have set the new sustainability strategy at Selfridges, buying better, inspiring change. And as you've covered, not just looking at your buying practices, but also how you create mindset change. And I see you here every year with Linda, your creative director, and I wondered, how have you made that work? Many businesses haven't been able to bring sustainability and creativity together. What's the secret?
Linda? I think one thing about Selfridges is it's a family-owned business. It's and our deputy chairman has a very long-term view of the legacy that she wants to leave. But I think the nature of the brand is favourable to creativity and sustainability working in harmony together. It's certainly what makes my role exciting, and one of the things I love about being there. Yeah. But I do recognise that sustainability people are quite often in a box at the sidelines of the business. And I think somebody mentioned a self-fulfilling prophecy. I mean, we as sustainability people and environmentalists fall into this trap around sitting there talking to ourselves, creating this giant filter bubble, and not trying to break down those silos across businesses.
Do you have a commitment you want to talk about? I'm not going to ask if you're going to sign the letter. I promise I wouldn't. But you've just launched something.
We have, yeah. So last week, so our approach to sustainability is called Buying Better, Inspiring Change. It's all about the culture change at Selfridges. We buy better, and we want our customers to buy better. So we're trying to avoid this preachy approach. And in January, we launched a creative scheme called Material World. We took 8 new designers and gave them a platform, used our platform to tell their stories. And we found that it echoes what people have been saying here. It's absolutely the hierarchy of messaging that's important. It's style and fit and fashion first.
And then it's really cool brands and designers, and then it's sustainability. And if you got it in the wrong order, then customers absolutely switch off. But through Material World, we took lots of learnings around that. And so last week we launched our Buying Better labeling, which is a product level label. Lots of work went behind getting this onto the product. So we've been working with brands to make this happen at the SKU level. And we've just started last week with 3 different labels, one around cotton, where the message is, we like your style. By investing in this brand that uses organic cotton or is a member of BCI, you're helping to make cotton production more sustainable. So it's a super simple messaging ticket which puts style first and then the impact of the purchase. And we've kind of quietly launched with cotton and denim and British makers. And what we want to do is attract more brands to using this labeling system so that we can see how our customers respond. And that's at a product level. And at a brand level, we're working with Positive Luxury on really on our digital platforms to really bring to life the brands that are doing good things and tracking that with data as well.
Very good. I could ask a million more questions, but I won't, because now the floor is yours. We had 3 already, which I think have been semi-answered, but put your hands up for any more questions, or if you feel that your question wasn't answered, put your hand up again. And we have a roving mic. Anyone? Yes, here. And the gentleman at the back, you had a question earlier. Do you still want to ask it? Okay, so we'll just go to the woman with the microphone, then we'll pass the microphone back.
This is for Kirsten. What do you think the Pulse report needs to make it better?
Sorry, I didn't get the question. Could you please repeat it?
Yes. What do you think the Pulse report needs?
Oh, yeah, to be very upfront, and I think this is what you expect from Greenpeace, I would say you need a complete rewriting next year.
Did you say complete rewriting?
Rewriting, yes, next year. As I said before, maybe not focusing also only on circularity, but focusing on slowing down, slowing the flow, then not blaming consumers and talking about education just of consumers, but taking a fair share of the responsibility. And also, as I said before, I would really love to see that the Pulse report would give a major show floor to small, innovative ideas. I think that would be really a major step forward for the Pulse report.
It's funny, because as we were discussing there's a disconnect in that I think the data is pulled from Higgs, so there's a limited amount of SMEs on there. But actually, so much of the conversation today has been around that small-scale innovation, and it would be interesting to find a way of putting together the conversation of today and the actual report.
Yeah, and I have to say, we were talking a lot today about collaboration. So when I think about collaboration, then I would really suggest to collaborate maybe as being part of the eco-fashion movement, to collaborate maybe with other sustainable lifestyles. So there are vegans out there, there are feminists out there, there are minimalists out there, there is the maker movement, yeah? Why not collaborating with them and not just understanding collaboration means collaboration with just big brands?
Great.
I've got a quote, can I say it?
Yes, you can.
For a long time, so brands have been trying to get consumers to buy something. It's now about getting consumers to be something. And I think that this is, it's not from me, but I just add a little bit. I think it's getting consumers as well to believe in something. As I mentioned before, the world is very confusing and it's very scary. And what we track is that younger generations, whilst they feel very empowered, they're very worried, about our world tomorrow. And I think that getting an angle on lifestyle is one of the ways to target and make sustainable sexy or, viable and scalable, if that makes sense. And definitely but the smaller brands and smaller ideas. I've got a friend, for example, she just started something, and which was just Ravensmutter. So you know what Ravensmutter means, but it's basically you're a bad mother if you're a Habensmutter, because that means that you didn't really care about your children. But basically what she's trying to do is she's targeting older women, more mature women, let's say, that have more money, have viable disposable income, and who really want to care and love their clothes, but they know that something better needs to happen for their children. So it's this angle, so it's that emotional, but it's funny at the same time, and she's taking, do you see what I mean? And I think it makes people smile, but she's got a purpose, which I think is, and we need, as the industry, to showcase more examples like that.
I think humour plus purpose is a killer combination. Gentleman at the back, your question. And do we have any others? You can raise your hands. I can see if there's... Okay.
Well, I wanted to hear your opinion on labeling, and it was great to hear Danielle saying that Selfridges is now labeling 3 different kind of labels. But we heard a lot about salaries earlier, that even the minimum wages are not enough for people to live. So as consumers and customers, it would be amazing to go buy a clothing rack and see, wow, this piece of clothing has actually paid enough for the workers to have a beautiful life. So how far away are we from that? I think it's mainly to you, Daniela, but the rest of you to answer too.
Great, thank you. Daniela, you okay?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. And when we were looking at, how do we start? Because we just wanted to start, or there's labeling, there's other types of labeling being developed by other organizations, and we were keen to just start. I'm a real fan of the cliche, I guess, that sustainability is a journey, not a destination. And so we went for these 3 areas because they were the most accessible to our customers and our brands. But I guess the social aspect is a lot harder to talk about labeling on. But I know there's a lot of work, and I know Olivia's involved in a project around living wage, and who knows where that's going to go. But I guess I can't answer your question, only to say that that's hard, harder than the material angle.
Yeah, I think the movements around the legal backing for a living wage is interesting, because one of the problems with labelling is finding enough commonality to label against, of course. But I see Diana, who runs Positive Luxury, has a question. So you may have something to say on this, or something else.
Daniela, because you talked about choice editing, and I was mainly curious to ask you if you can explain a little bit about your buying better side of things and the work that you're doing with your buyers. If you can share that with us, please.
Thanks.
Yeah, so we've been working with the buyers for the last 2 years now, and on a development program with the Centre for Sustainable Fashion, so with Dilys and with Alex McIntosh. And it's really a program to build their knowledge and skills around sustainability. And a lot of our buying team are very young. They're very excited about sustainability, but didn't know the right questions to ask when they were going out into market to buy brands. So I think the quickest way to sum it up is our buyers used to go out and say, is this a sustainable brand? And the brand would say, oh yes. And they'd say, great. Now we've moved to, tell me about where this was made, tell me about who made it, tell me about where the materials are from, what kind of transparency do you have around your labour standards. So it's really broad, and the challenge over the last, the first year was really the buyers wanted a list, what can we buy, what can't we buy, and it was quite challenging to resist just saying buy this, don't buy this, but I was really glad that we held off, and with the Centre for Sustainable Fashion have built the knowledge and awareness of the buyers so that sustainability becomes normalized in their buying practice, and they care about it, they know what we're looking for, and they know the right questions to ask, and more importantly, they know what answers to expect from the brands. And this, I'm really pleased to say, because they speak to the commercial directors in the brands, and has had the effect of linking up the commercial directors in the brands who then go back to their sustainability people and say, ooh, where do we get our cotton from? And so it's linking up communications channels within the brands that we buy from as well, which needs to happen.
Absolutely. Any more questions? Did you have a question? We have a microphone. Thank you for the microphone.
Hi, Danielle, I'm sorry because I feel like you've been talking a lot, but this question is also...
Any more questions from anyone other than Daniela?
Probably best for you, but I'd be interested to hear if the other panelists have something to say. I'm intrigued about the sustainability kind of initiatives that Selfridges have done so far, and I wonder what kind of consumer feedback you've had on those. Are people interested in the designers because they're young and new, or are they really passionate about the sustainability aspect too? Or do you think that's just kind of a side effect to them and they need to, maybe it's a longer process of learning for them?
I definitely think we need to be listening to our customers on an ongoing basis, but we took some really interesting learnings from Material World, and that was they were all great sustainability stories, and the brands were amazing. But the brands that were most successful in the round, and I'm including from a commercial perspective, were the brands that the buyers had the most faith in the beginning. So, for example, we had an amazing brand called Deadwood who upcycled leather into amazing leather jackets, which were kind of forefront of fashion, amazing fit, really good price point, and a great sustainability story. And we found that that way around, that hierarchy of messaging just gave us those success stories which we need, because the sustainable brands, of course, need to be commercially sustainable as well. But we've got a lot more to learn, and which is why we're going to continue to listen to our customers.
Right, well, on that note, we've got 40 seconds to go. So I thought I'd wrap up with just going back to this question about consumer agency, which we've heard a lot on. I think it's an excellent question around how do we give our consumers agency to change the industry. And I'm just going to point here to Fashion Revolution, which I sit on the global organising committee of. And I'm sure many of you come across it. It's the campaign which aims to commemorate Rana Plaza on the 24th of April every year, and gives consumers a platform to ask brands, who made my clothes? To build emotional connections across the supply chain. And it works because it's digital, it's based on status, it's based on emotion. So I'm just going to finish with a shameless plug of get involved. We've just had Fashion Revolution for this year, but there's activities going on throughout the year, and it needs the goodwill of the industry and everyone in this room to keep it going. So I hope you forgive me with a shameless plug for Fashion Revolution. I want to thank the panelists. You've done an absolutely awesome job. Thank you so much for sharing so generously of your experience and your expertise and your knowledge. Thank you to the audience asking such brilliant questions. And, I'm suddenly -30, so that will be it.